the wife, Lucía, who had always been indifferent towards us, was in a very good mood today. For once, she gently picked up Emma and kissed her forehead. Emma, full of surprise, looked at me and asked, "Dad, is Aunt Liu willing to be my mom now?" 5 years under the contract, Willow never wanted anyone to know she was married. She never allowed Emma to call her mom. However, what Emma didn't know was that Willow's happiness today had nothing to do with accepting this daughter, nor was it because she had had a change of heart. The truth was, just moments ago, Willow's secret crush had returned to the country, and it was time for us to leave her life. Chapter 1. As usual, I prepared a New Year's surprise for Willow. Red rose petals covered the bedroom, and the dining table was laden with a feast. 4-year-old Emma was running around with her short legs, busy hanging up little fairy lights. She looked at me and asked, "Dad, do you think Auntie will come home today?" My gaze darkened a little. I replied, "I don't know either, sweetheart, but the surprise still had to be prepared. What if Willow finally noticed how good I was to her?" Besides, I really wanted to see Willow smile. Just then, a knock came at the door. I widened my eyes in surprise. I had expected Willow to use work as an excuse to avoid coming home, but she had actually chosen to spend New Year's Eve with us, father and daughter. Does this mean Willow is starting to accept me? I smiled and quickly walked to the door. As I opened it, Emma, beaming with joy, ran out and shouted, "Auntie, Happy New Year." The next moment, Emma's voice suddenly cut off. My movements froze as well. I looked at Willow and the man standing beside her, and my heart sank. The man was Makoto, Willow's secret crush. Makoto was a student funded by the Liu family. He was handsome, charismatic, and despite his impoverished background, he was strong-willed. In the upper circles Willow moved in, he was an exception. Willow had fallen in love with Makoto at first sight. They quickly became a couple, and whether at family gatherings or charity events, the two of them were always seen together. Back then, the Liu family didn't approve of Makoto. They preferred me, so Willow would always use me as a cover for her dates, asking me to pick her up from the Liu family. Later, when Grandpa Liu fell seriously ill, his last wish was for Willow to marry me. Makoto, upon hearing this, chose to disappear without a word. Willow, devastated by the double blow, had no choice but to fulfill Grandpa Liu's will. She made a deal with me. We would divorce in 5 years and never interfere with each other's lives. The 5 years haven't passed yet, but Makoto has returned early. I had expected this, yet I still held on to hope. I bet that Willow would want to keep a bit of dignity in front of both the child and Makoto, but I was wrong. Willow looked at the garish room and frowned. She said, "I'm working outside, and you're here making a mess with Emma." "Never mind. It's useless to talk about it. Pack up the room and move the master bedroom out. You'll sleep with Emma tonight. Makoto just came back to the country. He's staying here tonight." I didn't miss the smirk in Makoto's eyes. I wanted to persuade Willow to change her mind, but my throat tightened, and I couldn't say a word. Willow brushed past me, pushing my shoulder aside, and took Makoto's hand as they walked straight toward the bedroom. I looked at the rose petals, now dirty and stained, and a sense of helplessness washed over me. I forced a bitter smile and looked at Emma, having to shatter her illusion with my own words. I said, "Mom has been in love with someone for many years, and he's come to see her. We need to leave now." That night, the sounds of Willow and Makoto laughing together contrasted sharply with the cold silence on our side. Emma cried softly, and my heart ached as I comforted her, taking a long time to get her to stop. The teasing voices didn't stop even late into the night. I put on my coat and walked slowly to the master bedroom door. I saw the light on, and I could clearly hear Willow's gentle voice. She said, "Makoto, why didn't you tell me you were back? It's been so many years since we've seen each other. Do you know how much I missed you? And my marriage to George is about to end next week. After that, you'll have to give me a grand wedding." I swallowed my pain and closed the door. In 5 years of marriage, we never even had a proper anniversary. Willow would always throw away the meals I carefully prepared for her or tear up the clothes I bought. Even Emma, when she called Willow Mom for the first time, was met with nothing but disgust in Willow's eyes. At just over a year old, Emma was punished to kneel all day. She cried until she nearly suffocated, not understanding what she had done wrong. I hugged Emma tightly, and saw Willow looking down on us with a cold, warning gaze. "I'm not your mother. You can only call me Auntie. And you, George, using the connection between our two families, aren't you tired of acting in front of me all these years? I've known for a long time that you liked me. If you hadn't hidden it so badly, Grandpa would never have forced me to marry you. He wouldn't have driven Makoto away. So don't call me your wife. Once the 5 years are up, we'll get a divorce immediately." That was when I learned that Willow had known all along how I felt, but she had used that knowledge to protect her relationship with Makoto. I took a deep breath, and the tears fell onto the divorce agreement, soaking the characters Willow had written. "Dad." Emma's voice came from the bed. I hadn't realized how late it was and that she hadn't fallen asleep yet. I squatted down beside the bed, gently stroking Emma's head. I asked, "Why aren't you asleep? What if you're late for school tomorrow?" Emma saw the redness in my eyes and reached up to wipe away the tears at the corners of my eyes. Emma hesitated and said, "Auntie said she'll take me to kindergarten tomorrow. She also said she'll pick me up after school in the afternoon. Can we wait a little longer?" I looked at the innocent Emma, feeling like my heart was being gripped by a huge hand, making it hard to breathe. I dug my fingers deep into my palm, forcing a smile onto my face. I said, "Okay, how long do you want to wait?" Emma looked at the teddy bear Willow had casually given her, which now had some frayed edges and cotton leaking out. Emma held it like a treasure, only because it was the only birthday gift Willow had ever given her. She said, 7 days from now is my birthday. I want to wait until then. If Auntie is with me, we'll stay. If she doesn't care, then we'll leave." I nodded and said, "Okay, Willow, I will give you 7 days. After 7 days, all the absurdity and ridiculousness between us will come to an end." Chapter 2. Snowflakes were drifting outside the window. I wrapped a scarf and hat around Emma, and as I reached for her gloves, I realized they were left in the bedroom. I stood up to go back and get them, but Willow frowned and said, "It's fine. Just put your hands in your pockets." Willow extended her hand to Emma and said, "Let's go." I wanted to speak, but Emma had already taken Willow's hand and turned to smile at me. "It's okay, Daddy. I'm already warm enough." As I watched Willow holding Emma's hand, walking away, I felt a sense of dizziness. In 5 years of marriage, I had spent most of my time with Emma. Willow was either out with her friends or traveling, but now, Willow had taken the initiative to assume the role of a mother and had chosen to take Emma to school. I knew this was because of Makoto's influence, but I couldn't help but feel a bit happy at Willow's active involvement. I had prepared an entire table of dishes according to Willow's taste, quietly waiting for them to come home. But after an hour past school dismissal and still no sign of Willow or Emma, I began to feel something was off. I quickly put on my coat and headed to the kindergarten, but I didn't expect to bump into Willow and Makoto. Acting intimately on the street, I instinctively hid, watching as Makoto wrapped his arm around Willow's waist and they walked into a secluded parking lot. Willow gave an ambiguous smile and leaned forward, kissing Makoto on the cheek. Makoto asked, "In such a hurry? Aren't you afraid George might see us?" He laughed, deepening the kiss. Willow shrugged and mumbled, "He always wants me to spend more time with Emma. He's probably made dinner and is waiting for us at home." Though they were dozens of meters away, their conversation wasn't loud, yet I heard every word clearly. My breath caught, and I watched helplessly as Willow got into Makoto's car. I saw them kiss in the car, as if making up for every kiss they had missed over the past 5 years. The car windows fogged up, and soon I couldn't see inside anymore. All I could see was the car shaking. My body had long been frozen stiff, yet my eyes were still glued to that black sedan. I didn't understand, why was it that, despite my efforts for 5 years, the warmth I could never give her, others could make her climb into their arms with a simple gesture? I thought back to our first wedding anniversary. I had spent 2 months learning how to bake a cake, whipping, frosting, and decorating it. The finished product was so good that even the pastry chef praised me. But when I handed it to her, all I saw in Willow's eyes was mockery. She said, "George, what are you expecting? Do you really think a cheap cake from who knows where can win me over? Instead of our wedding anniversary, you should remember the day you took my freedom away." I wanted to say no. It was Makoto who had left without a word first. It was Makoto who had given up on her. But looking into the disgust and resentment in Willow's eyes, my throat tightened, and I couldn't speak. In the end, the cake was thrown away, untouched, into the trash. I felt like a large hole had opened up in my chest, with cold wind rushing in. When I arrived at the kindergarten, Emma was hanging her head, the sadness she couldn't hide on her face. I picked her up and wiped the tear stains from her cheeks. Emma buried her head in my chest and mumbled, "Why didn't Mommy come to pick me up? Why doesn't Mommy like me?" I fought back the bitterness rising in my chest and comforted her, telling her that Willow had something urgent to attend to and couldn't come. Emma nodded, understanding. Willow didn't return home until the evening. At that time, I was checking Emma's art homework. She had expected me to be furious for not picking up the child, but to her surprise, I didn't say a word. This surprised Willow, because whenever it came to Emma, I always became unusually serious. Willow glanced at me and quickly looked away, unwilling to engage with me. She remembered the absurdity of what had happened in the car earlier and Makoto's low laugh. Her calm heart was once again stirred. She wanted to take a shower to wash away the sticky feeling from her body, but when she turned on the water, it was icy cold, drenching her hair. Willow frowned, water dripping down her wet hair as she turned to me, demanding, "Why didn't you prepare hot water? Don't you know I take a shower every night?" I didn't look up. I quietly continued to flip through Emma's sketchbook. In 5 years of marriage, I had memorized Willow's every preference. I tried my best to please her, always agreeing with whatever she wanted, never going against her wishes. Even if it meant running through a downpour to buy something 3 streets away, I would never hesitate. But how had Willow ever been treated this coldly by me? Chapter 3. A surge of unnamed anger suddenly rose within her. She took 2 steps forward and grabbed my hand. "George, if you keep ignoring me like this, I'll go to the divorce registry tomorrow," Willow threatened me, believing that I didn't want to divorce her, thinking that I was desperate to keep this marriage intact. Sure enough, I looked up, but in my eyes, instead of the fear Willow had hoped for, there was only the stillness of stagnant water. I asked, "You promised Emma. Why didn't you go pick her up?" When I arrived, she was the only one left at the kindergarten. Do you know how pitiful she looked? Willow suddenly froze. She had been with Makoto at that time. She had mentioned picking up Emma, but Makoto had just held her even tighter. Makoto had said, "That's George's daughter. I know you don't like her. When we have our own child, it won't be too late to be a good mother." Seeing my angry expression, Willow instinctively began to justify herself. She said, "I was busy. I forgot. Besides, it's the same if you picked her up. It's not a big deal. Why are you being so harsh with me?" Willow would never understand how laughable her self-proclaimed acting skills appeared to me. I quietly watched her, silently pushing the sketchbook on the table toward her. The moment Willow's gaze landed on the drawing, she felt a sharp pain in her chest. The title of the drawing was A Family of 3. The picture depicted Emma and her parents at an amusement park. Emma had won a stuffed toy in a competition. Her mother clapped and cheered, and her father proudly lifted her up, a picture of a happy family. Willow didn't speak anymore. The room was deathly silent. After a long pause, Willow finally spoke. She said, "Tomorrow, I'll take her to the amusement park as compensation for today." Emma had always wanted to go to the amusement park. Willow knew this, but she had always brushed it off, promising next time again and again. Willow tried hard to ignore the discomfort in her heart, but I looked at her coldly and said, "Don't forget again. In the last few days, I just wanted to part on good terms. I didn't want to break the final veil of modesty. I only hoped Willow could play the role of a good mother in Emma's childhood." When Emma woke up, she was overwhelmed by the sudden good news. She excitedly tugged at my shirt collar and asked, "Is it true, Daddy?" I couldn't stop laughing at her excitement, and I pinched her cheek playfully, pointing to Willow and saying, "Mom has changed her clothes already." Willow didn't correct me. Instead, she smiled at Emma. Emma, keenly sensing the change, hesitantly called out, "Mom." Willow raised her hand, and Emma reflexively shrank her neck, but Willow just rubbed her head. Emma was overjoyed. Along the way, she held Willow's hand tightly, her little hands red and frozen but unwilling to let go. She kept pointing at the snowman by the roadside, at the sleeping puppy, chattering nonstop. Willow responded to her one by one. By the end of the day, Willow had taken Emma on almost all the rides, including the ring toss game that Emma had drawn in her sketchbook. What Willow hadn't expected was that Emma, after struggling to win a small bear plushie, unhesitatingly gave it to her. She said, "Mom, this is for you. Thank you for playing with me." Looking at Emma's sparkling eyes, Willow couldn't quite express the feelings bubbling inside her. The Ferris wheel was the last stop of the 3-person outing. Emma curiously gazed at the night view outside the window, while Willow and I sat face to face. After a day of interaction, the atmosphere between us had eased considerably. Willow seemed like she wanted to say something, but just then, 2 messages popped up on her phone. She looked down and saw that the contact was Makoto. Makoto's message read, "I think I saw you. We used to come here together all the time." Chapter 4. Emma pointed excitedly at the brightly lit skyscrapers, enthusiastically describing the scenery before her, but Willow no longer responded, as though she hadn't heard a word. I didn't miss the joy on Willow's face. Through the reflection in the glass, I clearly saw Makoto's name. I remembered someone once told me that when a Ferris wheel reaches its highest point, if you make a wish, it will be heard by the gods in the sky, and your wish will come true. If you wish to be with your lover forever, you will spend the rest of your life together in happiness. As a teenager, I believed in this wholeheartedly. I tried every possible way to get Willow to ride the Ferris wheel with me, but she always brushed me off with one excuse or another. I firmly believed that one day I would win her over, so I bought a ring in advance and practiced confessing on the Ferris wheel by myself, imagining the moment of success. Now, I had finally made it to the Ferris wheel with her, but as I fiddled with the ring in my pocket, all the nervousness and joy I had once felt had long since vanished. Willow kept typing on her phone, and her smile felt painfully sharp to me. I took a deep breath and stuffed the ring into the gap between the seat cushions. At that moment, the Ferris wheel had just reached the highest point. I made a wish. If there's an afterlife, I never want to meet her again. I wasn't surprised by Makoto's appearance. The sudden brightness in Willow's expression said it all. Makoto casually patted me on the shoulder and said, "George, seeing Willow taken care of so well by you, I can rest easy." I didn't miss the faint hint of mockery in his words. Emma instinctively seemed to feel uncomfortable around Makoto, and Makoto crouched down to look at her, saying, "Emma, you've forgotten about me after just a few days. I even teased you on New Year's Eve." Emma didn't say anything, and seeing the awkwardness between the three of them, Willow stepped in to smooth things over. "Makoto's rarely back in the country, and it's been so many years since we all gathered together to catch up. Why don't we have a meal together?" Willow had originally stood beside Emma and me, but as she spoke, she walked over to stand beside Makoto. Seeing them side by side, I suddenly felt like the outsider. I said, "No need. I've got something to do tonight." I instinctively wanted to refuse, but Makoto leaned in, his voice not loud but enough for everyone around to hear. He said, "George, you don't dislike me, do you? Not even willing to have a meal with us?" I was about to refuse again, but I saw Willow's darkened expression. She said, "George, don't ruin the mood. It's rare for us to get together." The words were on the tip of my tongue, but I swallowed them back. I nodded, but by the time I did, Willow and Makoto had already walked far away. Willow said, "I know a restaurant with amazing food. When I went there for the first time, I thought you'd really like it." Makoto replied, "I'm not going to a restaurant you've been to with someone else." Willow laughed, lightly punching Makoto on the shoulder. She said, "I went there alone that day. No one else." Makoto asked, "Is that true?" "Lying is for little dogs." Makoto affectionately scratched Willow's nose. I clearly saw Willow's face turn red. She avoided Makoto's burning gaze. Willow said, "Stop it. I'm not a child." I stood frozen in place, my legs feeling as heavy as if they were made of lead, unable to move even an inch. My breathing became rapid as I watched them walk away, my eyes growing blurry from staring. Chapter 5. By the time I arrived, Willow and Makoto had already ordered their food. Makoto raised his hand and greeted me. "George, you don't mind me sitting next to your wife, do you? There really aren't any other seats." Makoto looked awkward, and I glanced at the two empty seats across from me, remaining silent. The waiter brought over red wine with foie gras. Makoto's eyes widened as he said, "Willow, I can't believe it, after 5 years, you still remember I love this dish." Willow raised an eyebrow and replied, "Of course, the rest of the dishes are all your favorites. They match your taste too." Makoto forked a large piece of foie gras and stuffed it into his mouth, saying, "Delicious." He made a face of pure bliss, while I lowered my gaze, cutting a piece of food and feeding it to Emma. Seeing that I didn't react, Makoto's eyes shifted slightly, and he asked, "Willow, you've ordered all my favorites, what about George?" Willow paused, her hand still holding a napkin. She said, "He's not picky. He'll eat anything. Don't worry about him." I handed Emma a glass of water, and where Willow couldn't see, I pressed deep marks into my palm. It wasn't that I wasn't picky, it was that Willow had never cared. It had always been me trying to please her, while Willow never once bothered with my likes and dislikes. Whether it was my hobbies, my food preferences, or my clothing choices, none of it mattered to her. In Willow's heart, I was just someone she settled for when there was no other choice. A tool to fulfill her grandfather's wish. That was it. That was all. I tried to calm myself, but I still couldn't suppress the surge of negative emotions. Emma saw everything clearly. Her eyes were filled with concern as she softly called out, "Daddy." I forced a smile and asked, "Would you like another piece? Let me get it for you." Emma, knowing I didn't want to lose face in front of others, nodded gently. At the other end of the table, Willow noticed a bit of food on the corner of Makoto's mouth and carefully wiped it away with a napkin. She said, "How are you still so careless? Just like before." Makoto grinned and said, "Just like before. Nothing has changed. This feeling is great." His words were full of the unspoken implication that I had ruined their lives. Makoto's gaze fell on me, and when he saw my face twist in reaction to his words, he smirked, clearly pleased with himself. He added, "If things had gone differently, our child would probably be about the same age as Emma by now." I could tolerate Makoto's provocation, but I could not accept his malice toward Emma. I could no longer bear the disappointment and anger surging within me. I shouted, "Don't bring the child into this." Makoto pretended to be surprised, first glancing at Willow, then innocently looking back at me and asking, "George, did I say something wrong? If it weren't for you running your mouth in front of old men, how would Willow and I have ended up separated? I know you like Willow, but it's been so many years. You should let her go back to me now." Makoto lowered his eyes, looking dejected. Willow saw this clearly and couldn't help but feel heartache. She tightly grasped Makoto's hand and didn't even look at me. A bitter feeling rose in my chest. I finally realized that everything I had done over the past 5 years meant nothing to Willow. I took a deep breath, deciding to leave this suffocating place. Emma, ever thoughtful, followed me silently. Willow didn't say a word to stop me. On the way home, Emma grabbed my hand. Her voice was quiet but firm. She said, "Tomorrow is Emma's birthday. Emma still remembered our original agreement. If Auntie is with me, then we'll stay. If she doesn't care, then we'll leave. Her innocent words echoed in my ears. I replied. Okay. Chapter 6. Willow didn't come back all night. My phone, on the other hand, kept ringing non-stop. George, why do you always cling to Willow? If you would just leave quietly, everything wouldn't be so troublesome. Makoto sent a picture of Willow's intimate clothing. He said, guess what we're doing? No prizes for guessing. From 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., Makoto sent messages every half hour, determined to destroy my dignity. George, have you tasted Willow's flavor? George, Willow calls me her husband. George, you saw the messages, right? Message after message came in, like countless steel needles stabbing into my heart. I was furious. I punched the wall with all my strength, and my hand instantly bled, but the pain in my heart didn't lessen one bit. The overwhelming disappointment and sadness wrapped around me tightly, almost suffocating me. When I closed my eyes, I saw Willow's cold indifference and mockery. When I opened my eyes, I saw Makoto's provocation and threats. I felt like I was trapped in a vortex of pain, forced to bear all the injustices. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. The life I wanted was never meant to be this way. How did it end up like this? Why? I looked at the photo of us on the bedside table, taken on our wedding day. I was smiling brightly, while Willow had an expression of impatience. It had been wrong from the very beginning. I shouldn't have fallen in love with Willow. There's a saying that I only now understand. Being close to you means being close to pain. Being far from you means being far from happiness. Willow and I were like this, forever unable to find true happiness. I couldn't sleep the entire night. It wasn't until the next morning that Emma, holding her doll, came over to sit beside me. We sat on the couch, quietly waiting for time to pass. When the clock struck 10, Emma couldn't help but ask, "Will Auntie come back?" My eyes were bloodshot as I looked at Emma and forced a smile. I don't know. When the clock struck 12, Emma jumped off the couch, took milk and bread from the fridge, ate quickly, and then returned to the couch to wait again. When the clock struck 2, Emma noticed my injury and fetched a band-aid from the medicine box, placing it on my hand. I held Emma tightly, not speaking for a long time. At 5, my phone rang. It was Willow calling. Emma's eyes lit up, and she excitedly leaned closer, eager to hear her mother wish her a happy birthday. Emma shouted, "Mom, Auntie." Willow paused for a moment, her voice tinged with impatience as she said, "Why are you shouting so loudly? I can hear you." Then she added, "George." I heard Willow calling my name, and I knew this opening line all too well. She said, "I won't be coming back tonight. My friend is having a gathering." I nodded after hearing her words. I stiffly turned to look at Emma, whose smile had finally disappeared. I was at a loss for words, unable to say anything. It was Emma who spoke first, saying, "I understand, Mom." This time, Willow didn't correct her. She simply murmured, "MHM," and quickly ended the call. Emma set her doll down and went into the bedroom to search for clothes. I could feel Emma's sadness, so I hugged her tightly. "It's okay. I'm here. I'm still with you. It's okay, Emma. And Daddy loves you." Emma buried her face in my chest, and I couldn't see her expression. She said, "Daddy." Her voice was muffled, and I felt a cold chill on my shoulder. It was Emma's tears. She said, "Let's go. Let's leave now." I once wanted Emma to have a healthy childhood with both parents by her side, but all Willow brought to Emma was countless instances of neglect and indifference. She said, "Let's go far, far away, and never come back." I booked a flight overnight and started packing my things. Emma glanced at the doll that had fallen to the floor, but ultimately chose to leave it behind. Willow wasn't her mother. The doll she gave her wasn't a precious gift. I moved quickly as I packed. I placed the divorce agreement on Willow's bedside table, ensuring she would see it at first glance. Emma stood at the door and asked, "Dad, are we ready?" This once homebody child urged me to take her away. I held her hand, and we walked out. "Daddy, where are we going?" I said. "To the South City." She asked, "Is it far from here?" I replied, "Very far." "Will Aunt Liu find us?" "No." "That's good." When we boarded the plane, I sent Willow a message. "The freedom you wanted, I'm giving it back to you." Chapter 7. After Willow hung up the phone, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She instinctively furrowed her brow, replaying the conversation in her mind. Makoto reached out and cupped her face, planting a tender kiss on her lips as he said, "Baby, I feel so happy right now. Tomorrow is Wednesday. It's both the day you're getting divorced and my birthday. We have to celebrate properly." Makoto rubbed his chin against Willow's forehead. In the past, this kind of gesture had made Willow feel at ease, but now it only made her feel uncomfortable. She subtly turned her head away, putting some distance between them. She finally understood where this unease was coming from. Yesterday, at the amusement park, Emma had mentioned something. "Mom, Tomorrow is my birthday. Can you be with me? At that time, Willow had been consumed by Makoto's messages, and absent-mindedly nodded without noticing the joy in Emma's eyes or the probing look in George's. It suddenly hit her. She now understood George's silence when he answered the phone. Those quiet 5 seconds were his complete disappointment in her. A wave of panic washed over Willow unexpectedly. Makoto picked up the teddy bear, carefully placed at the bedside, and absent-mindedly began playing with it. What's going on all of a sudden? You won't even let me touch it. He tugged at the bear's arm, and either because he was too rough or the bear was poorly made, the arm came off, revealing a clump of cotton. Willow stared at the scene, and suddenly, she remembered how Emma had given her this bear as a gift. Her face filled with joy. The word "Mom" echoed in her ears, lingering in her mind. A sharp pain struck her chest, and she quickly snatched the bear back. Staring at it blankly, Willow couldn't help but think back to the previous night. When the Ferris wheel reached its highest point, she recalled Emma's excited face and my smiling one. She remembered that she had wanted to say something to me then. What was it? Oh, she remembered now. She had wanted to say, it said that when the Ferris wheel reaches the highest point, the wish you make will be heard by the gods above. George, what is your wish? Willow had planned to ask. George had mentioned more than once that he wanted to ride the Ferris wheel with her. She knew he had a wish he was eager to fulfill, but Makoto's sudden message had thrown her thoughts off track. Her attention was diverted by Makoto, and the last remaining thought was abandoned. Willow felt a heaviness in her chest. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Makoto leaned back, a mocking glint in his eyes, but his voice was full of feigned grievance. Willow, you're not regretting being with me, are you? Makoto shook his phone and sighed dramatically. But, after what happened last night, you can't go back to them now, can you? Willow's face turned pale as she recalled the absurdity of last night. Her body stiffened as she looked at Makoto, whose voice was gentle but whose face was filled with ridicule. A great sense of unease enveloped Willow's heart. What did you say? She rushed over and tried to grab Makoto's phone, but Makoto leaned back, and she missed. Makoto raised an eyebrow and looked at Willow, whose face had turned ashen, and shook his head in resignation as he handed her the phone. The password is your birthday, he said, with a wink. Willow's hand trembled as she entered the password. She tried several times before finally getting into George's chat. The moment she saw the vile pictures and the provocative language, Makoto's laughter echoed through the room. The taut string in her mind snapped, and a ringing filled her ears. She stared at Makoto in a daze, and Makoto looked at her with a smile as he said, "You should have known this day would come, shouldn't you? Since you chose to be with me during your marriage, it's only natural for something like this to happen, right? And anyway, tomorrow you're getting divorced, and that annoying George, along with his annoying child, will be out of your life." Makoto reached out and ruffled her hair, gently wiping away the tears from the corner of her eyes, whispering in her ear, like a devil's whisper. His words confused Willow's mind, and she shivered. "You should be happy, Willow," with a loud slap. Makoto's incessant voice finally quieted. He covered his face in surprise, staring at Willow. Willow trembled in anger. "Who told you to send this to him? Who told you to send this to him?" Makoto grinned and said, "Willow, what are you pretending for? Did you forget what you called me yesterday?" He was smiling, but Willow felt like she had fallen into an ice pit, her breath becoming labored. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. It shouldn't have been like this. Willow took a few steps back, distancing herself from Makoto. She was wrong. For 5 years, she had romanticized Makoto's image, layer by layer, until the Makoto in her memory seemed perfect. Until this moment, when Makoto's darkness and baseness were fully revealed, she finally understood that the person she had loved all along was just an illusion. At that moment, she thought of George. She thought back to the previous night, when she and Makoto were nestled together, while George, forcing a calm expression, fed Emma. In truth, she had seen it, the sadness and the effort George was making to hold himself together, and she had also seen the anger in his eyes, but she had chosen to turn a blind eye. She had firmly believed that the person she loved was Makoto, not the man who had been by her side for 5 years, and so, once again, she ignored his pain and despair. Chapter 8. Willow hurriedly dressed, wanting to contact George, but she didn't know when her phone had been turned off. Behind her, Makoto's voice came, light and amused. "I turned off your phone so George wouldn't disturb our good time." "Willow, why don't you compliment me?" Endless regret surged in her heart, and Willow's defenses crumbled entirely. She shouted, "Enough, stop talking. I'm not going to divorce George, and I'm certainly not going to marry you. Don't think you can cling to me any longer, Makoto. From today onward, we're cutting ties. Never see me again." Makoto looked at her as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He bent over, clutching his stomach, and began laughing. He said, "Willow, 5 years have passed, and you're still just as naive." He laughed, wiping away the tears at the corners of his eyes. "I never cared about your love, His voice suddenly dropped, and he continued, "From the very beginning, all I've wanted is to destroy your marriage." He leisurely put on his clothes, recounting his plot step by step. He said, "The old man didn't know any better when he arranged for you and me to marry, but I never expected that the one who kept claiming to love me wouldn't even be able to protect her own body. 5 years of marriage, a 4-year-old child. Who knows if what you've told me is even true?" Each word made Willow's face turn whiter. Her body stiffened, unable to move. Makoto shrugged with a smile. "As a betrayer in a relationship, it's only natural for me to give you a little punishment. Such a pity for George." Makoto looked at the ceiling and sighed deeply. "No matter who he loves, he'll be fine. Yet that person is you, Willow." Makoto smiled cruelly, saying, "Fate always loves to play tricks on people, don't you think?" As his words ended, her phone finally powered on. She clearly saw George's farewell message. "You wanted freedom. I'm giving it to you." Just 9 short words, but they carried endless despair, self-blame, helplessness, and regret intertwined and tore Willow's sanity apart. Everything before her blurred with tears, and in her arms was the broken teddy bear, while in her ears was the mocking, triumphant laughter. A small part of Willow's heart still clung to the last shred of hope. Maybe George had said it in anger. Maybe he just needed some time to cool off. He loved her so much, how could he bear to leave her? Willow braced herself against the wall and stood up. She pushed past Makoto and staggered out the door. The biting cold wind immediately enveloped her. Willow hadn't even had time to put on her coat before her body began to lose sensation. Tears poured uncontrollably down her face, and the wind cutting across her cheeks felt like a blade. Willow ran as fast as she could, desperately moving forward. She was running too fast and slipped on the icy ground, falling heavily. The sharp pain coursed through her, and Willow clenched her palms tightly. She struggled to get up and stumbled forward. Blood stained the cuffs of her pants, but Willow didn't even glance at it. Her eyes remained fixed on the closed door ahead. When she gripped the door handle, her heart raced loudly in her chest. On her way here, she had rehearsed countless apologies in her mind, but when she opened the door, all she found was an empty living room. "George," Willow whispered, her voice trembling, but all that greeted her was an oppressive silence. Willow limped toward George's bedroom, and her eyes fell on the half-empty room. A deep sense of unease settled in her chest, and her heart beat faster and faster. Step by step, she walked toward her bedroom, and when she saw the papers on the bedside table, her breath caught. Willow stepped forward and saw the words, "Divorce Agreement," clearly written on the document. In that instant, all her strength drained away. Willow knelt on the floor, and the tears she had been holding back for so long finally poured out in large, uncontrollable drops. She could no longer suppress the pain that had been gnawing at her heart, and she broke down in a loud sob. "George, you can't leave me. I know I was wrong. I know I was wrong." Chapter 9. Meanwhile, on the other side, Emma curiously surveyed her surroundings. I waved at the woman approaching us. Anna. Anna was a friend I met when I was starting my business. She was efficient, strong-willed, and everyone called her Sister Yu. Anna flashed a bright smile, casually took my luggage, and ruffled Emma's hair. She said, "Take a good rest for the next few days, then think about your next steps." I nodded. After Willow and I got married, Anna moved to the southern city for various reasons. I'd reached out to Anna a few times since then, but each conversation was brief and ended quickly. I thought the bond between us had faded with time, but unexpectedly, Anna agreed without hesitation when I asked if I could stay at her place for a few days. I was somewhat surprised, but seeing how well Emma and Anna got along, I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It had been a long time since I'd seen Emma laugh so freely. I thought of Willow and wondered how she would react to the divorce agreement. Would she be eager to marry Makoto, or would she curse me for being ungrateful? In any case, she would probably feel like she had finally escaped a big trouble. Anna called out, "George." Emma chimed in, "Daddy." The two in front of me turned around to look at me. Emma was tiptoeing, cupping her hands around her mouth, shouting loudly. The morning sun shone on them, and as it reflected in my eyes, it created a beautiful scene. I started running slowly toward them, and then faster and faster. The wind whooshed past me. I saw the smile in Anna's eyes and Emma's rosy cheeks. In that instant, my heart, wounded by Willow's betrayal, started beating again. We arrived at Anna's house, where the table was laid with a variety of dishes. Anna pulled out a chair and said, "Sit down. I made your favorite dishes just like we used to have when we ate together. Try them." I froze for a moment. The buried memories began to resurface. I remembered that the last time Anna and I had a meal together was about 10 years ago. With 7 or 8 other partners. I hadn't expected her to remember my tastes so clearly. I suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable. But Emma naturally trusted Anna. She sat down without any hesitation and started eating the fried buns in front of her. She said, "It's delicious." Emma's eyes lit up as she repeated the action, stuffing her mouth. "Aunt Liu is amazing." Anna carefully wiped the oil from Emma's lips. She noticed my discomfort and broke the silence, saying, "George, I'm doing this for the friendship we've built over the years. You don't have to feel awkward. I'm not trying to make things difficult for you. It's just that after such a long journey, you need to eat something that suits your taste and replenish your energy." Anna's retreating approach made me realize that I had been overthinking things. I picked up a piece of tender beef brisket and started eating. Anna handed me a glass of water. I took it, and our skin briefly touched. Neither of us flinched. We both thought we were hiding our feelings well. But Emma, sitting nearby, saw through us completely. Her innocent voice rang out in the room. She said, "Why are your faces so red? The room isn't hot." Anna excused herself to the bathroom, and I lowered my head, continuing to eat without saying a word. Only I knew how fiercely my heart was beating inside. The cup Anna handed me was the one we had made together at the pottery studio. I had always known Anna had feelings for me, but at that time, my mind was fully occupied with winning Willow's approval, and I never considered starting a new life with someone else. After Anna's confession, she didn't give up. She used her birthday as an excuse to ask me to accompany her to the pottery studio. I agreed, thinking it was just an attempt to maintain a sense of dignity between adults. What I didn't expect was that she had kept that cup all these years. I hadn't felt cared for in such a long time. Living a life centered around Willow had almost made me forget that I existed independently of her. And now, Anna's actions were a reminder. When you immerse yourself in happiness, I'll silently protect you from behind. When you're entangled in pain, I'll reach out and pull you out of the mud. No matter what you choose, I'll be by your side. Chapter 10. The time spent with Anna brought a rare sense of calm into my life. I enrolled Emma in a new school, and every day, she would come home from kindergarten, chattering away nonstop. At those times, Anna would often widen her eyes in mock surprise and ask, "Did the teacher say you were the best, little darling?" Emma, proud of herself, would tilt her head up and say, "Yes, the teacher even made me the nap monitor." Nap monitor? Anna lovingly rubbed her face and said, "I told you, Emma is the best. The nap monitor is such an important role, and for the teacher to give it to you means she recognizes you." Emma, flattered beyond measure, beamed and eagerly leaned over the table to do her homework. In the kitchen, Anna and I exchanged looks and burst into laughter. We laughed harder and harder, until we were both hunched over, clutching our stomachs, laughing so hard we could barely stand up, with tears forming at the corners of our eyes. Just then, Anna stopped laughing. She looked at me, her gaze sincere and courageous. She took a deep breath and, with her bright eyes locked on mine, she said, "George, could you give me another chance?" I looked at her, and suddenly, I could hear nothing but the sound of my own breath, and all I could see was Anna. For some reason, I was certain that a future with Anna held no ridicule, mockery, or neglect. It would only have endless love, trust, and companionship. I watched my reflection in Anna's eyes, and all I could hear was the rapid beating of my heart and my heavy breathing. I opened my mouth and heard myself say, "Okay." From then on, our relationship grew exponentially. Emma had never seen this side of her dad. Every morning before leaving, Anna made a heart-shaped breakfast, and I would sit at the table, staring at the sandwich for hours, occasionally letting out a small laugh, almost like I had lost my mind. Emma frowned and pressed her little hand to my forehead, checking to see if I had a fever. I looked at Emma, pulled her into my arms, and gently rubbed my chin against her head, whispering, "Emma, let Anna Auntie be with you from now on, okay?" Emma didn't understand her father's strange behavior, but she understood the meaning behind the words. Afraid that I might change my mind, she hurriedly agreed. "Okay." I paused for a moment, looking at Emma's expectant face, and whispered, "So this is what happiness feels like." To celebrate Emma becoming the nap monitor for 2 months, Anna specially booked a children's restaurant. Emma wore a new outfit and dangled her legs excitedly, waiting for the food to arrive. It was at this moment that I ran into Willow again. As I was fixing Emma's hair, I caught sight of Willow standing by the glass door. Her face was as pale as a ghost. My body stiffened instantly, my face lost all color, and the humiliation and shame from the past rushed back to me. I felt cold all over, and my breathing became shallow. I never expected Willow to find me here. In my mind, she should have been relieved to leave, then rush to marry Makoto and start a sweet life together, as if Emma and I had never existed. But Willow rushed in. My body had already lost control when I saw Willow. I sat helplessly, unable to move, watching as Willow grabbed my wrist, as if fearing I might escape. She gripped it tightly, her nails digging into my skin. She said, "George, I know I was wrong. Please don't be angry with me, okay?" Only then did I notice Willow's eyes, red and bloodshot. I could tell she hadn't rested properly in days. She said, "I've broken up with Makoto. Can we start over and live a good life together?" Willow looked at me, her once proud demeanor now replaced by humility as she pleaded for my forgiveness. She said, "Let's just pretend nothing ever happened." Okay, we, the three of us, me, you, and Emma, we can live a good life together. I'll try my best to be a good mom. She looked at me, silent, and tears began to fall. She said, George, you can't leave me. Chapter 11. Anna's timely intervention prevented the situation from escalating further. She said, please let go. Her expression hardened, and she slowly pried Willow's fingers off my wrist. When Anna saw the bruises and swelling on my wrist, she furrowed her brow and pushed Willow away with force. Willow, unprepared for the shove, fell to the ground, staring at the woman in front of her. She had never imagined that anyone else could be by my side. From childhood to adulthood, I had always been like a fly buzzing around her, with only her in my eyes. Willow knew that, but back then, she didn't love me, wasting so many years of mine. Now, with sudden clarity, she came to me, expecting me to welcome her with open arms, tears of joy flowing freely. But how could I? How could I be with another woman? Anna stood in front of me, holding my hand tightly, my hazy eyes finally focused, and I instinctively gripped Anna's hand in return, showing trust that Willow could clearly see from the ground. Willow's gaze shifted to Emma, who was hiding behind Anna. Seeing the wariness in Emma's eyes instead of the usual longing for approval, Willow belatedly realized that something had changed. The humiliation of being abandoned, combined with anger and resentment, clouded Willow's judgment. She stubbornly believed that the woman in front of her must have seduced me to make me choose her. She said, he's my husband. You're just a mistress, shameless, disgusting. She pushed herself up with the wall, her voice full of vitriol. She pointed at Emma and shouted, I carried and gave birth to this child with my own body, and now she's calling a stranger her mother. How could you do this to me? Willow blamed everything but never mentioned what had happened on Emma's birthday, when she had been with another man. I knew that Willow had her own way of handling things, but hearing her insult Anna with the most vulgar words pushed me past my breaking point. I slapped her across the face, sending her back to the ground. Enough, Willow. I took a deep breath and said each word slowly. We're divorced. Willow covered her face, her pupils shrinking slightly. She looked at me, as if she hadn't understood my words. She asked, what did you say? Willow knew how much I had wanted to save our marriage. For 5 years, I had done everything I could to win her back, always afraid of being abandoned. My constant effort and care had only made Willow more arrogant. She had thrown away the gifts I'd carefully chosen for her, mocked the meals I'd painstakingly prepared, and bit by bit crushed my dignity. Even so, I had never once mentioned divorce. She was certain I couldn't live without her. But now, everything in front of her told Willow that I had finally freed myself from the past. My voice was cold and calm. I said, Anna is not what you think she is. Willow, I hope you'll watch your words. I think you remember that we were in a contractual marriage. I looked at her, my expression serious. In my eyes was a distance Willow had never seen before. I said, the 5-year term ended long ago. Our marriage ended then. In other words, we have no relationship anymore. If possible, I would like you to leave now and not disturb me and Emma any longer. Willow knew I wasn't saying this to scare her. Her face turned pale in an instant, and the stubbornness she had shown earlier disappeared without a trace. At this moment, she suddenly understood the helplessness I had felt during all those nights, tossing and turning in fear. Chapter 12. She said, I know you love me. Everyone knows you love me. How could you not want me? Willow's voice trembled, and tears immediately filled her face. She stumbled forward, trying to grab me, but only managed to fall clumsily at my feet. The once arrogant, spoiled woman had become a humble beggar for love, pleading for sympathy, while the one she had once looked down on now stood above her. George looked down at her, his gaze colder than ever, and Willow sensed that the words coming next would shatter her illusions. For a fleeting moment, Willow wished she were deaf. That way, she wouldn't have to face George's judgment, wouldn't have to endure the humiliation when her mask of decency was torn away. But no prayer could save her. George spoke, and all Willow could do was listen. I said, Willow, you know better than anyone how we ended up here. This time, Willow finally saw the disappointment in my eyes. I said, I gave you my heart, and all I got in return was trampling and mockery. I tried. I desperately wanted your love. I learned to be a good husband, doing all the housework, taking care of the kids, even sacrificing my career. But what did you do? You made Emma, who had just learned to call you Mom, kneel for an entire day. You denied her motherly love, making her call you Aunt instead. I couldn't help but smile bitterly as I continued. You hid our relationship, terrified of others finding out. You didn't allow me to call you my wife in public. That time at the friend gathering, I was drunk and barely whispered your name, and you slapped me without mercy. And yet, in Makoto's bed, you passionately called him husband. At dinner, you gently wiped his mouth. You were dropping Emma off at school just to hang out with Makoto, and for Makoto, you missed Emma's birthday. Willow, sometimes I wonder why I ever insisted on loving you. My eyes reddened, and my voice trembled with emotion. How am I supposed to love you? What more do you want me to do to satisfy you? Willow's face lost all color as she heard my words. She said, I'll change. Give me another chance. Please. I really know I was wrong. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I looked at Willow, offering the same gentle smile I had given her when we first met, crushing any remaining hope she had. I said, it's too late. I turned around and grabbed Emma's hand, heading for the door. Willow, unwilling to accept this, reached out to grab me. Anna, who had been prepared, shoved her hand away. Anna had already called the police when Willow started acting out, and they arrived just in time. Willow was subdued by the officers, watching me walk further and further away, struggling in vain. She cried out, I'll change. I really will. Please. George, please. Willow's desperate pleas echoed throughout the restaurant. I didn't even look back. Overwhelming regret and helplessness drowned her, and she collapsed to the ground, powerless, as the police dragged her away. Chapter 13. The celebration that Anna had prepared for Emma was ruined by Willow, and I felt a bit guilty. I spoke softly. Anna, I'm sorry. I really didn't expect her to find us here and cause such a scene. I felt a little uneasy. After all, no one likes to be suddenly berated for no reason. I was thinking of leaving, even considering how to help Emma adjust to the new environment more quickly. Anna turned her head in surprise to look at me. She said, George, you don't need to feel guilty. Just from one meeting, I can already feel the suffocating pain you must have experienced with Willow. What happened today was unpredictable. How could I just shift all the blame onto you without considering the situation? Anna took a deep breath and continued. More than that, I'm more concerned about how this might have affected your mental state. Do you remember what I said? I will always stay by your side. That wasn't just empty words. It was my sincere thought. No matter what happens, no matter what you go through, I will always choose to stand by you. George, do you understand my feelings? When I snapped out of it, I realized Anna was tightly pressed against me. Our eyes met, and we saw our own reflections in each other's gaze. For a moment, our heartbeats seemed to sync, and the sound was deafening. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but it felt as if the temperature in the air rose with our movements. I noticed the tips of Anna's ears turning pink, her eyes glistening with moisture, her eyelashes trembling slightly. Nearby, a mall was celebrating its grand opening, and fireworks exploded in the sky, drowning out the surrounding noise. The next moment, I kissed her. Our lips met, and I saw Anna's eyes widen slightly. I raised my hand to hold the back of Anna's head, deepening the kiss. My kissing skills were terrible, but fortunately, Anna's weren't much better either. Anna's laughter bubbled up between our lips, and I suddenly realized how forward I was being. Embarrassed, I pulled away, but Anna grabbed my face, smiling, and gently kissed my cheek. She said, George, I've been waiting for this day for so long. That night, I arranged for Emma to sleep in the next room under the guise of her growing up. Under the soft yellow light, I kissed every part of Anna reverently. Anna's gaze was dreamy, but she kept whispering my name. George, I'm here. I love you. I love you too. The same words kept repeating, as we continually reassured each other. I held Anna tightly, almost wanting to merge her with my bones. Wang. I kissed her, and her hoarse voice was swallowed by my lips. Anna left passionate red marks on my back as we embraced. In that moment, our souls were connected, and all we gave each other was endless trust and deep love. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for standing in front of me without hesitation. I once thought that eternal love was just a fabrication of ancient people, but until she slowly walked into my heart, I realized how shallow I once was. Some people are born just to love you. No return expected, no reasons asked. Again and again, they pull you out of the mud. They take you to see the stars in the sky. Chapter 14. Willow was detained and educated for an entire night. Someone gently advised her, you and the men have already divorced. From a legal perspective, you have no relationship with him anymore. It's not right to keep clinging to him like this. Everyone deserves a fresh start, and you can't keep holding on to the past, can you? I also roughly understand your family situation, long-term separation, little communication with the child, and infidelity during the marriage. You both ended up in divorce, and you should really reflect on what you did wrong in this relationship. Willow stared blankly at the ceiling. Her mind, which had been clouded by anger, started to clear up. She began to reflect, like an observer looking back on the 5 years she spent with George. Insults, sarcasm, slander, and disdain. Willow had always exercised her superiority over George, controlling and suppressing him. In fact, George had also reached his breaking point at times. His eyes reddened, and he asked her why she tortured him. How did Willow respond? She couldn't even be bothered to look at him and, yawning, went into the bedroom. She said, you could choose to divorce, George. Aren't we here today because of your selfishness? At those moments, George would calm down. He would obediently pick up the broken shards of a ceramic vase she had thrown, continuing to clean up even if his fingers were cut. His expression would return to calm, though pain spilled from his eyes. For a long time, Willow found enjoyment in his suffering, as if this could make up for the regret of not marrying Makoto. She purposely showed off her closeness with Makoto in front of George, trying to provoke him and make him abandon his foolish hope of loving her. But it wasn't until she saw the mockery in Makoto's face and the cold, distant eyes in George's gaze that she realized how pathetic she had become. Willow couldn't help but feel guilty. If she had treated George better back then, if she had been more patient, if she had tried to accept him, would things have turned out differently? She remembered when they had just married, George, trying his best to please her despite her volatile mood. He contacted Liu's parents, carefully noting down the dishes Willow liked and her preferences. When Willow came home from work, she would find the table filled with a feast. She could tell right away how much effort he put into it, and she could see the blisters on his palms. In his eager gaze, she picked up a piece of food and put it in her mouth. It was her favorite flavor, but she deliberately dumped the whole dish into the trash to humiliate him. She said, "The food's too salty. Can anyone eat this?" She frowned, scolding him, watching the light in George's eyes fade, his smile slowly disappearing. Then she heard him say, "Sorry." At that moment, her absurd and unreasonable actions became a sharp blade, carving a deep wound in Willow's chest. It was her own fault. She had pushed him away step by step. She had driven him away, step by step. It was all her fault. Willow took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and tried to hold back her tears, but she failed. Tears began to flow, more and more. Eventually, the dam broke. Anna and I had scheduled our wedding for New Year's. On the wedding day, there were countless guests in the audience, all offering their heartfelt blessings to the couple. Anna looked stunning in her exquisite wedding dress, and even I was left speechless by her beauty. She stood at the end of the red carpet, giving me a sweet and happy smile. I walked toward her, my heart beating so loudly it almost shattered my eardrums. Anna reached out her hand, and I gripped it tightly. Cheers and blessings filled the air. Petals floated in the air as time seemed to freeze at that moment. The officiant congratulated the newlyweds, and Emma, dressed in a ceremonial dress, carefully held the wedding rings. I looked at Emma, and it felt like I was looking at her as a baby once again. It seemed like just yesterday I was asking Emma to call me Daddy, but now, she had grown into such a little adult. Emma hugged Anna tightly and, with a clear voice, called out, "Mommy." It was the first time she confidently called her Mom in front of everyone. There was no blame, no cold glares. Anna bent down to pick her up and gently kissed her on the cheek, responding with warmth. She said, "I'm here." Emma's face lit up with a brilliant smile. My phone in my pocket vibrated. It was a transfer notification. Willow, trying to make up for her past mistakes, voluntarily transferred the Liu family's assets to me. I briefly glanced at Willow's name before putting the phone back in my pocket. Someone I had once loved deeply now seemed like a fading memory, almost forgotten. It was all in the past, I thought. My life had already moved forward. The officiant's loud voice interrupted my thoughts. "Mr. Wang, do you take Miss Anna as your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, in wealth and poverty, to love and cherish, for as long as you both shall live?" Although I had practiced countless times in private, I still felt a little nervous. My palms were sweating, and my voice trembled when I spoke. I said, "I do." Anna smiled and kissed my lips. Emma, holding my leg, shouted, "Daddy and Mommy will always be together." The happiness I had been pursuing for so many years finally took shape in that moment.